welcome to day 10 of my tutorials. I will be honest with you, this tutorial will be quite small, but you'll still learn quite a lot. We'll probably aim for something like 15 to 20 minutes, half an hour the most. I like to keep these tutorials, short and concise so people can understand the tutorials and learn day by day and slowly but steadily, if that makes sense. If you're joining me at these tutorials part way, you can go to my website www.andrewb3d.com. I have the first section, 4 first videos halfway down the page. I know I say this during every tutorials, but I do like to stress just in case someone does come in part way. And the rest of the videos in tutorials. And you have all the past videos here. We're up to video 10, which will be here. And after that, there'll be a separate page link that will, go on to the next second page, because I'm going to do each page with 10 videos on, if that makes sense. So do refer to my website. You can go to my Twitter, which is this one here, at AndrewB3D. On here I've got some other examples of my 3D asset work and all my past videos and my working in progress and stuff like that. So do follow me when you get a chance. Okay, so we begin. I know last time we talked about the basis of physically based rendering and setting up. Now, the reason being, you're probably thinking, why has this not been left the way it was last time? The reason being that is because we're using a default cube, and as a default cube, it's a preset, and Substance Designer I don't think saves the preferences that way. It's because we didn't click on the actual models, which I'm now going to do. Now, I will stress to you, remember rightly, I exported 4 different models. I wasn't sure how the outcome would come out with the high and low models, so I like to test it. This one here is the overall. As you can see, it's got the high and the low, and it does not look brilliant at all. So that's a test, that that was failed. But it's always good, the fact that we saved these other files as well, because I wasn't sure if this one would fail or not. Because it did, you could tell, right, at least I got the high and low on the separate file, like so. And you have this one here, which is the high, and then the 4 separately, which we don't need. So this one we can remove. Just simply click remove and click yes, and it removes it. The same with this one here, because we don't need these two. We'll be working on the high and the low. The working folder will be, the working file is the low poly, because that's what we textured. This high poly is used for reference and for rendering out, maps, occlusion maps, height maps, normal maps, stuff like that. So we don't need to go into that file, but the low file, and start working into here by setting up the scene. So getting your environment, attaching the environment actual image. For me, it's gonna be Tenerife, road in Tenerife Mountain. Of course, you can choose whatever environment you like, and you'll probably notice during every tutorial I may change the landscape, because that will change the lighting, and different lighting will show a different kind of texture and view it differently compared to other lightings. So Next, I like to go to Environment, Edit, turn off the visibility. Now I didn't do this last time because we just imported them, but it is possible because this is a separate object to this. We could turn this off if we so wanted to. We could do that in the main file that was salt here, but it's always good to have a high and a low, and since that didn't come out too well, it doesn't matter. But you can do this by going into Scene Edit and then Plane 2 and just turn it off. It just turns the visibility off. Now we're going to do two different tests when we actually render out the maps. We're going to render out one with and one without, because I ain't too sure if by turning off if it will alter the mapping because of how the light rays bounce and perceive on the models. So we first do it without, because I'm convinced that it doesn't matter, but I never tested it that way, so I always done it before I turned it off, so it's a new learning curve for me. So now we start. Now it's time to start modeling it out. So what I normally do, I normally go to Base. This is what I normally do. I normally go to Base Material here. This is a base material. It contains all metal. It contains gold, silver, aluminium, iron, copper, titanium, nickel, cobalt and platinum. I use this because it's a good starting point. And it also have delicate, diminutric, I can't pronounce it, I do apologise, but that means non-metal. And down here you can enable use defined maps. So basically what this is doing, this is outputting correct kind of physically based rendering values, because if you're creating an asset that is not physically based correct, it would alter the model and it will not look good compared to most places, compared to the lighting. So I like to start off with this. Since the main actual model will be wood with a bit of gold decoration, we could have two. Copy and paste. Just go, Control C and F or Command C and F, and set this up for gold. And this, if I compute nodes, you have to compute it so it can be seen. This will do gold. So at the moment, this graph is not connected to any viewpoint, it's just a graph. So it has to be connected to this model. To do that, you have to go to Throughout Ports in 3D View, in Salt Material. And it'll bring out to this shiny material. It's because there's no information. There's no information in the black, in the actual base material, so it's defined as black. There's no normals, so it's all smooth. And because by default it's defined that as black, so it's saying, hey, it's reflective. And since metallic base is white from metal, that's why it looks more that kind of look. So normally what I do, I normally attach this to all the outputs. Now you could do it individual by one and then individually connecting all the connectors to connect one another to the outputs, or press 2, which does material, so it brings all the connectors together to the output. Or you can press 3, which is compact, which you can just click and drag the actual line out and it automatically connects it that way. I personally like using number 2, so I know what I'm connecting, but it's down to you. As soon as you click that and you connect all of them together, it'll bring you to this kind of view to the actual model. Obviously this isn't the material I'll be using, but this is the decoration. I'm just showing you this in principle, what physically based rendering do in Substance Designer. This is the roughness map. Obviously it's just a plain grey, a grey map. So it's saying, hey, this is smooth by this amount, but there's no dirt layer, there's no noise, there's nothing. You can generate a procedurally grunge map with grunge amount, turn it up, and as you can see, it's enabling a noise map, which makes this a little more dirty and more realistic. I also like to make it slightly more black, so it's slightly more polished, because I see gold more polished. If you do tarnished gold, then it won't be see-through, but for something that isn't like that, something like that, something that is, brand new, not tarnished, I like to do something like that, because you've got good reflectivity going on, and it's quite good for gold. It's a decent material. You don't need to touch the metallic because gold is metal. You can import your custom grunge input. I normally do that. I normally create my own kind of grunge map by going into noises. If I can find noises here, and then use all these grunge maps and blend together to form a completely new custom one. You've got random seed in it as well, so you can create random noise patterns that's different to the preset. I normally do that, but something like this doesn't need it because we're just using this as decoration. It's going to be, the decoration is at this point here, and this bit here where the nut is, and perhaps my name here. So we don't need to worry about that. When you want to disconnect a node, just select all the wires and then delete, and then bring it back to the default material. So, and it's the kind of same with dielectric. When you click dielectric, you turn it saying it's not metal. You know it's not going to be metal. So you drag out, and now it's plastic. It looks more plasticky because it's grey. You can change the colour to whatever you want. So there's a red plastic. The more increased roughness, black roughness you add into it, the more see-through the plastic becomes. So you can have really glossy plastic, like a billiard ball. Or the more rougher you get, more, matte kind of plastic you get. It depends on what you like to do that. I like to use this base material and add my texture behind here in the user defined. So then I've got all these controls. I can say, hey, roughness is this amount. I can preset, predetermine it. So the next thing to do, because this is wood, I'll find a wood texture. I like using the preset materials that's actually shipped in the Substance Designer, and then any free ones that's on the actual share. The reason I like doing that is because they're a good starting point, and you can get so many iterations. And when you're doing something like a simple asset, it's good to have a variation. Now I just click and drag some wood American cherry. This is something that I got downloaded from the actual Substance Designer website. When you buy Substance Designer and Painter, you automatically get the live, and monthly they drop a free substance. This is one of them. So when you install it, I'll show another day how to install packages like this. But this is basically saying this is unused dependencies. In other words, it's not based on the actual main installed file, but it's elsewhere, if that makes sense. Just click OK and it still brings it out. So since this is going to be the base, we're applying the texture onto the base. So what I do, I will enable all the base, normal, roughness. We wouldn't need to do metallic because it's going to be white and black anyway, because it's not going to be a metal. But I'm going to enable it anyway, and just click and drag them across. If it like that doesn't work out, material mode, individually do it and bring them out like so. And there you have a wood texture. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, you will get this. The reason you've got two different directions is because of how we on UV maps it. You will get it because this is a seam line. Basically, this is a planar mapping and a spherical map. So you always will have a scene here. But it doesn't matter when you, in a wood kind of created kind of asset, you will get, a wood kind of object, you will get blending like that anyway. But it doesn't matter because I can hide that scene with the gold kind of decoration. So that doesn't matter. As you can see, there's no controls here for roughness or anything, or anything like that. And even when you, enabled it in the user defined, all these controls go. So you had to create these controls. You do that by going into roughness. You see, this is how rough it is. And then you add blend node. So you right click, add node, blend, and it'll create this node here, background and foreground, a bit like in Photoshop where you have black in the foreground and white in the background. This is the kind of thing, it's telling you, you're saying, okay, I want this colour in the foreground to blend with the background. So I always put my roughness in my background. When you get that red line, it basically means that it's not compatible because, a node like this is like both black and white. So when you put something in, the first line determines what it is. So since I put the color node line in here, which is defined as orange, it turned the node to color based. But when you've got a grayscale, which is defined by grey into it, it converts it to a grey blending node. Quite smart that way. Then from here, I like to add a uniform colour. Change it to grey. Pick a greyish colour. Drag it in. And then choose a blending node. Copy will just copy this colour on top of that, so it doesn't reblend it. So I like to use overlay, and it overlays this grey colour with this grey colour, making it a darker colour. This will initialize that control, because as you brighten it up, the more brighter this image gets, as you can see. And it creates like a second control. You can then expose this as a variable as roughness control, with roughness control, so you can control how rough you want the wood, and then plug it back into the roughness. As you can see, it's made it more shiny. But the trouble with this is not efficient yet, because you have this individual node that's rendering out at 1024 and it's just grey, so it's not efficient, it's not optimized, so you have to optimize it. You do this by going to absolute. Like I showed you last time, when you set up the graphs, you have absolute and relative to parent based on what you're using. On this one, you can use absolute and turn it down to 16-bit. You're asking yourself, why 16-bit? Why not anything smaller? That's because 16-bit is the lowest that Substance Designer can render out. Now you're probably asking yourself, why you turn it down that way? Surely it will alter the texture. No, it wouldn't, because this is just a simple colour. You're just defining this to be this colour, overlaid by this colour. So there's no information that's been used. It's just the colour based information. So Substance Designer computes every single node, and since even though it's efficient in when it creating textures, it's more smaller and output textures than we do in Photoshop and Handmade. But when you come to rendering out and calculate, computing, especially in Games Engine, 1024 and 2K maps take a little bit, so you had to make it efficient by lowering that processing time by turning it to 16-bit. Now you probably think, okay, that's messy because you can have a load of nodes here. Each square is called a node, by the way. You hide it by going D, which then docks it to the actual blending node. Now, you won't need to do it to the base or normal or metallic, just the roughness. You can also alter the roughness in here, but once you do that, you can't expose it, so you can't have any control over it. So that's why I like doing it myself. And because this is a base wood, you can alter it. So you can say, oh, we can have it this amount of knocks and this amount of fibers. From here, I think I will leave this tutorial here. Tomorrow I would, I'll start rendering out ambient occlusion maps, normal maps, height maps, and show you my process, how I generate my initial mapping, my normal mapping for Substance Designer. I think I'll leave it here because it's a good point to leave it. Thank you for today, and make sure you do save your materials, your actual substance. So join me tomorrow.